This is part of my premium course, so if you like this video, be sure to check out usefullaravelpackages.com. Okay, let's take a look at Pest by Nuno Maduro. Pest is an elegant PHP testing framework with a focus on simplicity. It removes all distractions from your PHP unit tests, allowing you to focus on what's important. It's framework agnostic and it works with any PHP project, but in this video, we'll take a look at using it within Laravel. So in a nutshell, if we go into the docs, you can use Pest to write your PHP unit tests like this. Sorry, wrong page. Like this. So you can see we can use this closure syntax, and we can use either the test method or the it method, and these are interchangeable. You just use whatever makes sense grammatically. So I have a sample app here, typical blog implementation where we see our blog posts here. We can create a post, and you can only create a post if you're logged in, and you can view a single post. I also have tests backing up this functionality. It's called post tests, and let's see these tests run. So if we run PHPUnit, there we go, or we can run PHP artisan test. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to convert these tests into Pest tests. So let's start with the installation. So it says we need PHPUnit version 9 and collision version 5. So we have to upgrade that in our composer JSON because we are not at those versions as of yet. Probably in the next version of Laravel, they should be those versions. So PHPUnit should be 9.0 and collision should be 5.0. Okay, save that. Let's run composer update. Okay, that's done. Let's continue. Let's go ahead and require Pest. Okay, and it says if you're using Laravel, we have to use this command to install it. Okay, so you see it added these two files, which we'll take a look at later. So now we have this new Pest CLI command. So if we run vendor bin pest, then it will run our tests. And as you can see, it still runs our PHP unit tests just fine. So it makes migrating to Pest pretty painless. So you probably want to alias this. So I have an alias for Pest, and we can just run Pest like this. Cool. So let's go ahead and convert one test over, and we'll see how that looks. So I believe there is also a new Pest PHP artisan command. See, let's find out if it does. So Pest, yeah, so Pest test, and then we will create a new test. So PHP artisan Pest test. Let's call it posts Pest test. Okay, and as you see, it created a new feature test, and you can create unit tests as well, but we'll just stick to feature tests in this video. And there it is. And you can see an example test here. And let's go ahead and create this fake endpoint so we can get this test to pass. So it's called posts pest. So if you go to a routes file, let's just make a dummy route here called posts test, and we can just return anything here. And this should pass now. So if I run Pest, this is going to run everything, including our new Pest test, and it fails because I named it wrong. So posts Pest. And let's run that again. And now you can see it passing right here. Cool. So let's go ahead and start converting our tests over. So the first test in our normal test is this one right here. So the main page loads correctly. So let me just grab this, and we can replace this one, I guess, and just paste it in. And I'm going to comment this line out for now. This has to do with the setup method, which we'll take a look at in a second. And let's just rename our tests. What was it called? The main page loads correctly. So now let's make it grammatically correct and say it loads the main page correctly. So this is going to fail because our main page requires the database. So we need the refresh database trait. So let's run our test and see it fail. There we go. And let's go ahead and add that trait. So we would include the trait in a similar way. So we can just grab this and put it right here. But to make use of the actual trait, instead of using use refresh database, we have to use a method here called uses. And then we can do refresh database class. And now this should work. So let's give this another run and see if it passes. Cool. So if you look at the docs, you can actually abstract this away to the pest file here, which was created earlier. So let's go to docs and let's go to, I believe it's in underlying test case. And as you see here, you can use it in this file and it will work in all your tests. So let's do this in the pest file. So let's get rid of this. And let's make sure to include the use statements up here. And now we can get rid of it in our pest test up here. So it makes it cleaner. See if this still works. And it does. Cool. So now let's take a look at the setup method. So back to our normal test. You'll see I have a setup method here. It's not really doing anything because I didn't make use of it in my tests, but I just want to show you how to use it in Pest. So I am assigning this instance variable called hey to the value of artisan, and I'm asserting it down here just to show that this setup method runs before every test. So let's do the same for Pest. So if you look at the docs and setup and teardown, we can make use of this before each method. And this is pretty much the equivalent of setup in PHPUnit. So again, the closure syntax, back to our pest test. Let's put it up here. And let's say this hey equals artisan. And now we can uncomment this, and this should still pass because this method will run before each of our tests. And you can do the same for, what's it called, after each as well, if you want a teardown. Yeah, but we'll just stick to before each for now. And let's see if this works. And it does, cool. So let's convert another test over and let's take a look at helper functions. So I'm going to convert this test down here. And this one is responsible for checking if logged in users can see the create post button. So you can only see this button if you're logged in, and we are, so you can see it here. So let's go ahead and recreate this test in Pest. So I'm just going to grab this and paste it down here and close it out. And let's name it the same, but let's remove the underscores. Okay. And this is an instance when the test method makes more sense, so it reads better. So test logged in users can see create post button. And I forgot to remove this one underscore. And let's make it a bit more grammatically correct and put the word the in there so it reads much nicer. Okay, so let's just grab the test. We can basically just copy and paste it. And let's paste that in. Cool. And let's run our test, and this should pass. Class user not found. So yeah, we still have to import this. Cool. Let's try again. And it does work. So if you look at the docs under the helpers section, so custom helpers. So it says Pest autoloads the tests helpers method, which was created when we installed Pest right here. So we can add any global helpers in here and our tests can call them. You can also just define it in the test locally. So if you wanted a helper function in here, you can just do function my helper or whatever, and then you can just call it from your tests. Or like I said, you can put it in that helpers method or helpers file. And if you look at the helpers, there is an example one for acting as. And if you look at this test method, if you look at the docs, it just says the test function allows you to get access to the current test case. So it's just deferring to the actual acting as method. So what that does is it allows us to use the acting as method in our test without calling this. And again, it makes our code a bit cleaner and more minimal. So if I remove that, this should still work. Let's run Pest again. Still works. So if you want, we can get rid of this call to get as well if we make a helper method for that. So again, same thing. Let's just define a method here for get. So function get, and it's a string. We need the URL, and let's just say return test get URL. And now this should still work, but now we've cleaned up our code again. Cool. So if you look at the docs for higher order tests, we can also write our tests chaining on methods like this. So let's see how we would do that. So back to our Pest test. Let's do it for this one here, since it's fairly simple. So we would grab this, but instead of a closure, we would just chain on these methods. And let me just say chained here, so we have a different name. And from here, we would just chain on methods. So get, but if you look at the docs, it says you can't use Laravel helpers like route. So we have to manually do that. So we'll just do get the home page, and we can start asserting right away. Assert successful. Okay, and we can assert C posts. Okay, let's see if this works. Should be green, and it is. Oh yeah, something else I forgot to show you is any PHPUnit assertions can be written like this with the this keyword, or again, we don't need that for PHPUnit assertions. So similar to how I just showed you, we can get rid of that, and that should still work. Oops. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just recreate the rest of these tests, as it's pretty much just copying and pasting and changing the name of them. So I've gone ahead and recreated the rest of our tests in Pests, and I've also added a global helper for assert database has, so we can get rid of the this keyword as well. So same process here. And if I run my tests, everything is looking good and passing. So one more thing I want to show you that's essential to my workflow when I'm testing is the ability to run single tests wherever my cursor is. So for that, in VS Code, I make use of a package by Caleb Porzio called Better PHPUnit. So if you look at my extensions here, you'll see I have it installed somewhere right here. And there's one for Sublime too called Sublime PHPUnit. So if you go into our normal tests, and if you go into one of the tests and run our key binding, it will just run that single test. So I usually do this when I'm writing tests, as I don't want to run my entire test suite because that can take too long. So I was digging into the issues to see if anyone converted this over to Pest, and someone actually made a fork of Caleb's package called Better Pest. So just search for that in your extensions, and you can see it here, and I have it installed already, and it's created by Miguel, and it's pretty much the same thing as Better PHPUnit, but it works for Pest. So if you go here, back to our Pest test, we can do the same thing. So put our cursor here, and I don't have a key binding yet, so I'll just run it from the command palette, but you'll see that it does work. And hopefully this is eventually merged with Better PHPUnit, so I can just use the key bindings that I already have. So if you take a look at our final test here, you'll see that we got rid of all the setup, and our test feels lighter and easier to read. So if you want an even better experience when writing your tests, be sure to check out Pest.